Hello. Today I'd like to talk to you about things I don't understand in the Bible. Okay, let's begin. It doesn't take long to find things I don't understand. Like a law that says I can't cut my hair here ever, my whole life. Seriously, this is what God wants to make laws about? So, I think it's pretty self-evident that there are many things in the Bible which are no longer applicable. For example, you can't cut your hair here or ever sin in any way if you want to make it to heaven by being righteous. Okay, I think we can accept that. So, it's over. Give up. You didn't make it. So, there's another way to get to heaven, which God was very clear about in Genesis early on by saying Abram believed God and it was credited to him as righteousness. So they were always trying to summarize the law. I've heard it said Moses had 656 different laws. And then Isaiah or Elijah narrowed it down to 9, and Nehemiah summarized it with 7. And of course, in one of the books of the Bible that's evading me right now, he boils it down to 3. Oh man, what does God require of you? But to do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with your God. 3 things. He boils it down to 3. They loved doing that. I like that when he says, oh man, he says Adam. He says, this is universal for all man. Oh dirt, oh earthly one. What does God require of you? But to do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with your God. So later the Jews were asking Jesus about this, and they said, what's the greatest commandment? Jesus asked them. And they said, to love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. This is the greatest commandment. Jesus said, yes, that's correct, that's good. But the second is no less great. Love your neighbor as yourself. And it was in this context that he told the story about the Good Samaritan, because they were saying, well, who's my neighbor? If I want to get into heaven, I have to love God and I have to be nice to my neighbor. But who's my neighbor? So they were saying, define for me the least I have to do to get into heaven. And sadly, this is how I lived my life. My goal was to sin as much as I could, but still get into heaven, which is a fundamental misunderstanding that sin is fun. It's not fun. It's horrible. So when Jesus told the parable of the Good Samaritan, a man is hurt on the road, good people keep walking by and doing nothing, and finally a Samaritan comes, takes him, bandages him up, takes him to a hotel, says he'll pay for whatever needs to be done because he has to move on with his life, but he'll come back and pay the bill. And so Jesus turns to them and says, who was a neighbor to this man? So they were asking, who is my neighbor that I owe kindness to? What's the minimum I have to do to make it to heaven? And Jesus flipped it on its head and said, who is a neighbor to this man? And I think what he's saying to us is, don't ask me what you have to do to get to heaven. Instead, ask what kind of God would invite you to heaven in your current state. The question is not if you're acceptable to God. The question is, has God accepted you? Is this a God of overarching, overriding love who has died on a cross for you? If that's not true, please, despair, frustration, all that stuff is yours. But if God sought us out, came to earth, bled for us, reasoned with us, came at us with logic, came at us in his actions, and then provided a way for us to be in heaven with him, regardless of your sin, regardless of your accomplishment. If he loves you because he is one who loves, that's the question you should be asking. So please, humans, college kids, we often ask, what do I have to do to get to heaven? You're the rich young ruler. Don't be that guy. Instead of asking what you have to do to get to heaven, ask if you're invited. Ask if he loves. I need to think of a good line for signing off from these. For now, God bless. Look forward to seeing you next time.